I am California of the past.
I am California of the past.
I
I
am
am California of the
past.
past.
Monday, November 22nd, 1980, the day of the Panorama fire, was the most disastrous event to date in San Bernardino County history. The day began warm and windy, very windy, as the Santa Ana winds had been blowing steadily all during the weekend. Extremely strong gusts were howling down through the Cajon Pass and bouncing off the foothills into the north end residential neighborhoods. I was at work that morning at a doctor's office at St. Bernardine Medical Center near Highland and Waterman Avenues. Already edgy because of the wind and concerned that a fire which had started on Mount Baldy earlier that morning was turning our sky darker and dirtier, I decided to go home for lunch and even declared I may stay home that afternoon if the wind didn't let up. It was just after 11 o'clock. I did not realize that a new fire had already started at Panorama Point on Highway 18 in Waterman Canyon. Driving north up Sierra Way from Marshall Boulevard on, the air had turned smoky and thick and yellow, and the sour smell and strong, strong winds all fed this nervous sense of energy to get home. Our home was on Sequoia Street, 1 block south of North Park Boulevard, just east of H Street. When I arrived, my husband was already there. I was a little embarrassed about maybe overreacting, but I wanted my children home, and Bill went to Shandon Hills Junior High on Little Mountain Drive to get our daughter Marcy. I called the school to have her ready to be picked up, and was later told that Marcy was the first student to leave the campus, that it turned to pandemonium as parents started arriving and pulling their kids out soon after. At the same time, our son Dan had left Cajon High School on his own and started home at a run, using the lid of a garbage can to protect himself from the rocks and debris flying in the air. Marcy and I decided to each pack a suitcase just in case. Even then, we didn't understand the enormity of what was happening. I packed with a surreal sense of playing house. I tossed in a pair of Levi's for Bill and a useless pair of dress shoes. I don't remember anything of substance except my carton of cigarettes and Bill's pipe tobacco. Marcy used better sense, packing some clothes and the Christmas present she had already stored under her bed. Fortunately, she had bought her dad a pipe because I didn't pack anything to go with his tobacco. Bill returned to work, taking his scanner, but as soon as he plugged it in, he heard that 5 homes were on fire on Mayfield Avenue. He called home and told us to leave right now. The van was already packed with our dogs, our parrot, our photo albums, and my stamp collection. Suddenly, the actuality that the fire was in our neighborhood and that the danger was real was almost impossible to believe. All sense of logic and clear-headedness was gone. Trying to get out the front door, which we could barely close against the force of the almost 100-mile-per-hour wind, not gusts, wind, and grabbing just anything in sight on our way out, an enamel vase sitting on a table. I don't remember Dan carrying anything, but he must have grabbed our suitcases. There were spot fires on our front lawn, burning shingles, tar paper on fire blowing in our faces. Our palm tree was on fire, and we fought to get the van sliding door closed, again against the force of that wind. It is amazing even now to realize that at that moment, in just seconds really, all the houses across the street were already destroyed. It was so black that we could not see the actual fire. I think I was the only car heading south down 8th Street, with cars coming up through the blackness and denseness of the smoke-filled air. No one able to see much of anything. I pulled over at 48th and H just as Bill was heading up. Dan jumped into his car, and the two of them planned to go back to the house for more things. Turning the corner on Sequoia, a fire truck was pulling up in front of our house, and Bill turned around knowing there was nothing more he could do. We met at the Auto Club downtown on 2nd and 8th Streets, where Fairview Ford is now, and sat around on desktops, everyone listening to the scanner and trying to make sense of what was happening. We got a motel room where we snuck our dogs upstairs, although they probably weren't going to enforce their no pets policy. We stood out on the balcony from 4th and G Streets, watching the fire burn well into the night and waiting for the radio to announce the imminent evacuation of all homes north of 30th Street. If that line didn't hold, then the next evacuation point was Highland Avenue. Amazingly, when we drove home the next morning, our house was standing, along with our neighbors on either side. Only 3 houses left on our entire block. Our neighbor, Bobby Olivert, had stayed on the roof of his home next door, putting out fires, jumping in his pool when it got too hot. How he could keep his balance in that wind, I'll never know. None of our roofs were wood shingle, and that helped. We had had the fronds of our tall palm tree trimmed earlier that week, and that was extremely lucky. Our house survived. The fire truck parked in front was burnt to the ground. In the end, 4 people died, and 284 homes in the North End were completely destroyed. The fire continued to burn for the next 5 days, traveling across our mountains from Crestline to Devore. They say that things are only things, and it's people who count. I can't disagree with that. But I had just lost my father that summer, and all of our family heirlooms had just recently been moved to our home. They had survived the fire and earthquake of 1906 in San Francisco, and now they've made it through another fire. The loss of physical things is meaningless compared to the loss of life, but I treasure those objects now more than ever, and they are a part of my identity. One thing I learned: when faced with imminent danger, I no longer think clearly. Now I keep a recipe card, one for each room of the house, and I've written on it what is most important in that room to try to save if there is time. For example, kitchen, medicines. Having this information written down gives me a sense of preparedness. We've been evacuated twice since the Panorama fire, and we know it can happen again.